The water was only leaking, but the CEO's life was flooding. In his billion-dollar tower, Julian Thorne was the very definition of touch-starved, not for affection, but for dignity. Then, a single black father and master plumber, Eli Vance, walked in to fix a pipe and ended up delivering an ultimatum that cut straight to the bone. Welcome to Equinarrative, where we dive into the true cost of success. This isn't a story about a broken sink. It's about a broken system. Eli, tired of having to shrink his truth to fit Julian's privilege, finally snapped. He wasn't asking for respect. He was demanding it, frame by frame, inch by inch. He forced Julian to see that his wealth had walled him off, and the only way out was through the hardest lesson he'd ever receive. A lesson that came in the form of a shocking, metaphorical command. This story is intense, deeply human, and essential viewing. Before we start this raw, anti-racism journey into what it means to truly see another person, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You don't want to miss our next deep dive. The Gilded Cage and the Slow Drip. Julian Thorne wasn't touch-starved in the literal sense. He was dignity-starved. At 32, he was the youngest CEO to take a major tech firm public, residing in a penthouse where the air felt too thin and the marble too cold. His world was sleek, curated, and utterly solitary. His emotional vocabulary was limited to 4 words: aggressive, profitable, scalable, necessary. The problem was a slow, irritating drip under the artisanal copper sink in his executive bathroom, a trivial nuisance in a billion-dollar world. When Eli Vance arrived, the contrast was immediate. Eli, a master plumber and a single father from the city's working-class heart, carried the quiet confidence of a man who knew precisely how things worked, from plumbing systems to human systems. His hands were scarred and strong, not from typing, but from turning wrenches and lifting heavy truths. Julian, mid-conference call, didn't look up. He gestured vaguely at the bathroom with a wave of his expensive pen. It's the pipe under the main sink. Fix it. Just be quick and quiet. The dismissal was unconscious, a reflex built on years of success. The person doing the service is part of the background, a momentary glitch in the seamless experience of wealth. Eli felt it like a vibration in the floor, not malice, but the casual erasure of his humanity. It was the same subtle, systemic disrespect he navigated every day, the kind that whispers, "You are useful, but you are not seen." He simply nodded, his eyes lingering on the framed corporate accolades before turning to the pipe. The eruption of the riser. Eli worked methodically, the gentle clink of tools the only sound breaking the silence of Julian's opulent apartment. But the problem wasn't the slow leak Julian noticed. It was a pressurized riser pipe buried deeper in the wall, structurally compromised by a previous, shoddy renovation. It was a metaphor Eli couldn't ignore. Fixing the surface wouldn't mend the fracture underneath. Julian finally stepped away from his desk, needing a coffee refill. He stood in the doorway, scrolling news feeds, occasionally sending curt text replies. "Mr. Thorne," Eli said, his voice level. "The main riser is cracked. I can bandage the drip you see, but it's going to blow within the year. I need to open the wall and replace a 4-foot section." Julian sighed, exasperated. "Open the wall. Can't you just inject some epoxy? This is $1 million view. I don't want a construction site." "It's not about the view, Mr. Thorne," Eli countered, looking straight at him, his gaze firm. "It's about the pressure. It's too high for that crack. And if it blows, it'll flood this entire floor." Julian finally lowered his phone, seeing Eli for the first time, not as a service provider, but as an obstacle. "Look, I appreciate the drama, but I'm telling you to do the easy fix. Do what you're paid for." That was the spark. Eli had taken too many easy fixes when a hard, necessary truth was required. He thought of his son, Marcus, who was learning to navigate a world where people like Julian would try to tell him to patch a crack instead of demanding the dignity of a proper foundation. The fatigue of always having to be the one to yield, the one to take less space, snapped. "Do what I'm paid for." Eli's voice was low, resonating off the cold marble. I'm paid to save your house, Mr. Thorne. But who's paid to save you? The shocking order. Julian blinked, thrown off script. Excuse me. Eli set his tools down, the silence now deafening. He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. You're alone in this fortress, Eli stated, pointing to the empty expanse. You treat the human beings who walk in here, your assistant, your housekeeper, me, like we're just another utility. We are the ones who ground you, the ones who literally keep your world running, and you've systematically starved every interaction of dignity. He walked closer, not invading Julian's space, but forcing Julian to acknowledge his presence, his sheer size and substance, a man who built his life inch by hard-fought inch. You want an easy fix for a crack? I'll give you one. You've been taking too little and demanding too much. Eli leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a powerful whisper, the words of the title a sudden, shocking injunction. You'll take every inch until you can't walk, Eli said, the words heavy with metaphor. Julian flinched, the sheer audacity and double meaning hitting him like a physical blow. Eli continued, his tone softening only slightly to define the order. I mean space, Mr. Thorne. Every inch of dignity. You stop moving through life expecting people to shrink for you. You take up the space you are given. You stop settling for half measures of connection. You stop letting the world see you as only profitable or necessary and demand to be seen as human. You take the inch of kindness offered by the person who hands you your coffee. You take the inch of vulnerability when someone asks how you are. You take the inch of respect you owe yourself and me and everyone else who comes through that door, until you're so full of the weight of being that you can't walk away from it. Do the hard fix inside, Mr. Thorne. Stop patching the surface. The weight of the world. Eli finished the conversation with brutal efficiency, replacing the riser pipe and patching the wall cleanly. He handed Julian the invoice, the highest Julian had ever seen for a minor repair, but Julian paid it without argument. The price wasn't for the copper, it was for the truth. As Eli packed his gear, Julian stood in the middle of his sterile office, the silence no longer peaceful, but echoing. Eli's words, "You've been taking too little and demanding too much," reverberated. Julian realized he had spent his life demanding deference based on his status, but offering no dignity in return. He remembered the look in Eli's eyes, the exhaustion of constantly having to assert his professionalism and value against a backdrop of expectation. Eli, the man who balanced a family and a difficult trade, had more grounding, more life, than Julian, who had everything money could buy. He looked at the small, framed photo on his desk, his father, looking proud and distant, taken shortly after Julian's IPO. He hadn't seen his father in 2 years, too afraid to take the inch of vulnerability required to call and admit his success hadn't cured his loneliness. He was, truly, touch-starved, not for physical touch, but for genuine, human connection that starts with seeing and respecting others. Claiming the ground. 2 weeks later, Julian was walking through a different part of the city. He wasn't in a luxury car. He was simply walking, trying to feel the ground under his feet for the first time in years. He wasn't looking for Eli, but he found him anyway. Eli was at a local community center, running a free introductory plumbing workshop for teens, his son Marcus helping him distribute tools. The room buzzed with focused, messy activity. Julian hesitated at the door, then took a literal deep breath and walked in, feeling the awkwardness of his tailored suit against the backdrop of raw effort and community. Eli saw him immediately, his expression unreadable. Julian walked over, stopping a respectful distance away. "Mr. Vance," he said, holding out his hand. This time, Eli met his gaze and took it, a firm, non-hierarchical handshake. "The pipe is holding," Julian said, a slight, unfamiliar tremor in his voice. "They usually do, when you fix the root cause," Eli replied simply. I haven't been able to walk away from what you said," Julian admitted, the words feeling heavy and true. "I called my father. We talked for an hour. It was difficult, and I started looking at the people in my office, seeing them, giving them the space they earn." He paused, then added, it feels heavier and lighter all at once. Eli looked at him, a flicker of approval in his eyes. He motioned to the tools. That's what dignity is, Mr. Thorne. It's heavy, but it gives you something to stand on. You finally took that inch. I think I need a few more, Julian admitted, a genuine smile cracking his careful exterior. Then keep taking, Eli said, turning back to the teenagers. The ground is yours. Julian didn't ask for a favor or a lecture. He simply watched the man who had seen past his wealth and into his rot. He stayed for 10 minutes, watching Eli teach, seeing the immense dignity in the work and the grace with which he treated his son and the students. Julian left the community center, not heading back to the penthouse, but to the grocery store. He decided he was going to cook a meal, a messy, human act, and invite his assistant over, not as a superior, but as a person. He was, slowly, taking his inches back. He was learning how to walk again. This story is built around the themes of dignity, anti-racism, and emotional reckoning. Eli's order is a powerful challenge to systemic disrespect, forcing Julian to see past his own privilege and isolation. What aspect of this initial reckoning would you like to explore next? Deep Dive. Explore Julian's first attempt to implement this new philosophy at work. How does he change his interactions with his staff? Backstory. What led Eli to deliver such a risky, personal ultimatum? What's the story of his life and his motivation as a single father? Conflict. Introduce a new character who challenges Julian's change, forcing him to defend Eli's lesson. Let me know where we should take the next